Ladies, let's talk. I want to share something with you that might be hard to hear at first, but I promise, by the end of this, you'll feel more empowered, more in control, and more aligned with the truth about how attraction and love actually work in men. We're going to unpack something that's been misrepresented in movies, romanticized in books, and misunderstood in relationships for years. Why do men seem to lust first and only love later? Why is that so often the pattern? And most importantly, what should you do about it? First, let's break down a truth that many people are too afraid to say out loud. Lust is easy. Lust is instant. Lust doesn't require vulnerability, connection, or effort. Lust is a biological spark, something that can be ignited by a glance, a curve, a smile, or the way you carry yourself. And for men especially, that spark is often the first thing they notice. It's not because they're shallow. It's because, biologically, we are wired to recognize attraction in a very visual, instinctive way. It's primal, it's automatic, but here's what most women get wrong. They think that if a man lusts after them, if he desires them physically, that must mean he's on the path to falling in love. That it's just a matter of time, that all he needs is a few weeks, a few shared secrets, a few good dates, and the right lingerie. But lust is not a bridge to love. Lust is a test. And many women are failing it, not because they're not good enough, not smart enough, not beautiful enough, but because they're treating lust like it's the same as interest in who they really are. Let's get something straight. A man can want you without ever planning to truly know you. He can fantasize about you, pursue you, text you late at night, take you out, and still never actually be emotionally investing. Because lust doesn't require depth. But love takes time. Love takes character. Love takes consistency. And if a man is going to love you, it will be in spite of the lust, not because of it. Think about it like this. A man can be drawn to you like a magnet. He can be obsessed with the way you move, the way you laugh, the way your body looks in that dress. But that has nothing to do with whether he sees a future with you. That doesn't tell you if he respects you. That doesn't tell you if he values your values. That doesn't tell you if he will be by your side when things get hard. What I want you to understand is this. The fact that a man lusts after you means nothing about your value. It says more about his biology than your worth. What matters is what happens next. Does he show up? Does he listen? Does he stay when you don't make it easy? Does he reveal himself emotionally? Does he earn your trust through actions, not just words? See, there's a difference between being desired and being chosen. And you have to be smart enough to spot the difference before your heart gets involved. Men will often start with lust, that's true, but whether that lust evolves into love has everything to do with your standards. Too many women confuse the fact that a man is pursuing them with the idea that he's emotionally investing, and they give too much too soon emotionally, physically, mentally, because they feel flattered by the attention. But attention is not affection, and affection is not commitment. You have to stop letting lust be the foundation of your self-esteem. Let me ask you something. When a man desires you, what are you thinking about him? Are you evaluating who he is, what kind of partner he would be, or are you simply flattered by the fact that he's into you? Because here's the trap. When you base your romantic decisions on how much someone likes you instead of how they treat you, you're walking blind into disappointment. If you want love, you have to slow down. You have to create space between the spark and the fire. Lust will always come fast. That's why it burns out quickly. But love grows, it deepens, it tests itself. It's forged in time and consistency and shared values. So the question becomes, are you creating the space for a man to reveal his true intentions, or are you letting the excitement of lust convince you that it's something more? You are not hard to love, but you are hard to earn, and that's exactly how it should be. You shouldn't be won over by lust. You should be curious about it. What does this man want? Who is he really? How does he act when he's not trying to impress me? Is his interest sustained when the sex is not on the table? Is he consistent when I challenge him? Does he respect my boundaries? If a man can't handle being told not yet, then he was never planning to stay anyway. And let me tell you something about emotionally mature men. The ones who are truly looking for connection, not just conquest. They might feel lust first, sure, but they respect a woman who has high standards. They appreciate the slow build. They're not scared off by the word no. In fact, that's when they really start paying attention, because anyone can play the game when it's easy. The right man is revealed when it gets a little harder. But you have to give him the chance to show you who he is, not just through what he says, but how he acts when he doesn't get what he wants right away. Lust wants to possess you. Love wants to know you. Lust is loud. Love is patient. Lust is about fantasy. Love is about reality. And yes, some men never move past lust. And that's okay. That's their story. But that doesn't have to be your heartbreak. Your job is not to convince a man to fall in love with you. Your job is to observe who he becomes after the desire. Do his actions deepen as time goes on? Or does his energy fade once the thrill is gone? You're not here to audition for someone's affection. You're not here to sell yourself to the highest bidder. You're here to discern, to assess, to value your own worth so highly that a man has to meet you there, not drag you down to the level of instant gratification and empty promises. So, the next time a man comes in hot and you feel that rush, that dopamine spike, that desire, that urge to give in to the moment, I want you to breathe. I want you to take a step back. I want you to ask yourself, is this attention or is this intention? Because the woman who can tell the difference is the woman who wins, not in games, not in manipulation, but in truth, in alignment, in real connection. And that's what love actually is, not a firework, not a fantasy, but something that can only begin after the lust has calmed and both people are still standing there saying, I want to build something with you, so don't chase the lust. Don't idolize the man who desires your body. Wait for the one who is curious about your mind. Don't measure your worth by how quickly someone wants you. Measure it by how deeply someone sees you. And when you start showing up with that level of confidence and clarity, trust me, lust won't be the end of the story. It'll just be the first chapter of something much more real. I know what some of you might be thinking right now, but if I don't give him something, some sign I'm interested, some intimacy, won't he lose interest? And that's the fear that traps so many women in cycles of chasing validation instead of choosing alignment. You worry that if you don't feed the lust, the connection will disappear, but that's exactly the point. If the only thing holding him there was desire, then you're not losing love. You're avoiding disappointment. Lust that fades without emotional investment is a bullet dodged, not a heartbreak lost. The key is to shift your mindset from how do I keep him to who is he really when he doesn't get his way. What does he do when you show your standards, when you express your needs, when you say no? Real love doesn't disappear when you set boundaries, it gets stronger. Lust vanishes when challenged, love becomes more certain. And if you're being honest with yourself, deep down, you already know this. You've seen it before. You've felt the difference between the guy who sticks around because he wants you and the one who sticks around because he wants the feeling of winning you. There's a reason why so many women end up confused in situationships, in those blurry in-betweens where he's not ready for a relationship, but still wants to spend time with you. That's the language of a man who is emotionally feeding off your presence, but not willing to give anything real in return. And what often keeps women trapped in those situations is that early intensity. The lust that was so intoxicating in the beginning, it felt like fate. But chemistry is not compatibility, and intensity is not intimacy. You have to learn to separate the thrill from the truth. The real truth is that lust makes men feel powerful. It makes them feel alive. It gives them a mission. But love makes them vulnerable. Love requires them to drop the act, to face their fears, to be accountable. And not every man is ready for that kind of responsibility. That's why some men fall fast and vanish quicker. It's not because you did something wrong. It's because when the rush wore off, the work began. And work is where men who are only interested in lust take the exit. But the good news, that's also the filter. When you stop confusing lust with love, you start spotting the exit takers faster. You stop personalizing their departure. You stop asking what you did wrong and start realizing they were never right. You begin to see that someone wanting your body is not the same as someone cherishing your heart. You stop shrinking yourself to be more desirable and start elevating yourself to be more discerning. And here's something else most people won't say, but I will. Part of the reason lust is so alluring for both men and women is because it plays into fantasy. In lust, you don't really know the other person yet. You're projecting your hopes onto them. You're seeing what you want to see. That's why it feels magical. But real love is grounded in reality. It's not about fantasy. It's about acceptance. Love sees the flaws, the bad days, the disappointments, and still chooses to stay. Lust wants to feel good. Love wants to grow. So when you think about the men you've been involved with, ask yourself this: did he ever really know me, or was he just enjoying the fantasy of who he thought I was? Did he ask deep questions? Did he care about my inner world? Did he hold space for my emotions? Or was he simply captivated by the surface-level story he made up in his head? Because when a man only engages with the version of you that's convenient for his desire, he's not loving you. He's using you as a mirror for his ego, and that's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to recognize. You can't control how someone approaches you, but you can control what you allow to continue, and that's the power you must start owning. Don't be afraid to be misunderstood by the men who don't take the time to understand you. Don't be afraid to be too difficult, too high maintenance, too slow to open up. That's not a problem, it's a filter. It sends away the ones who are only here for the performance, and it creates space for someone who wants the full experience. You're not here to be consumed, you're here to be loved, and those are two very different things. Here's another truth. A man doesn't truly fall in love until after he respects you, until he sees you hold a boundary and thinks she's not like the others. Until he notices that you don't need him to feel whole, until he realizes that your life was already full before he arrived, and you're not auditioning to be chosen. That's when love begins, when he sees that you're not playing a role, you're living a standard. When he understands that intimacy is a privilege, not a transaction, and if he can't handle that, let him go, not because you're bitter, not because you're punishing him, but because you're not in the business of lowering yourself to be liked. You're in the business of living truthfully, and truth is magnetic when you are fully yourself, unapologetic, emotionally honest, deeply self-respecting. You attract people who are ready for the real thing. You stop being a convenience and start being a commitment. You know what love actually looks like. It's a man who's interested after the initial fire has settled. A man who's curious about what makes you tick when you're not trying to impress him. A man who leans in when you're messy, moody, or complicated. Not because it's fun, but because it's you. That's love. It's not the butterflies at the beginning. It's the strength that shows up when things aren't easy. And if a man doesn't stick around long enough to see that version of you, he was never looking for love, just a high. We live in a world obsessed with shortcuts, Swipe left, swipe right, instant matches, fast attraction. But love is not a swipe. It's not an algorithm. It's a process. And the more you rush to lock down a man because the lust feels electric, the more you cheat yourself out of the process of seeing who he really is. Don't mistake momentum for meaning. Just because things are moving fast doesn't mean they're moving in the right direction. So what should you do instead? You build a life so rich, so full, so complete, that any man entering it knows he's got to add to it, not distract you from it. You date not to feel validated, but to feel aligned. You measure a man not by how fast he wants you, but by how consistently he shows up. You let your curiosity lead, not your craving for connection, because craving makes you chase. Curiosity makes you choose, and that shift, going from craving to choosing, is everything. When you're craving, you'll tolerate breadcrumbs, you'll romanticize bad behavior, you'll give passes to inconsistency. But when you're choosing, you become powerful. You don't ask, will he like me? You ask, is this the kind of love I deserve? You stop chasing intensity and start choosing intimacy. And if you're afraid that by doing this, you'll lose opportunities, you won't. You'll lose distractions. You'll lose the men who were never serious. You'll lose the games. And what you'll gain is clarity, peace, confidence. You'll stop wasting time wondering why someone pulled away after sleeping with you. Because you won't be giving your body to someone who hasn't earned your trust. You won't be handing out emotional intimacy to someone who hasn't proven consistency. You'll finally be dating from power, not from fear. Every time you honor your standards, you send a message, not just to men, but to yourself. You remind yourself of who you are, of what matters, of what you're building. You stop being impressed by lust, and you start being moved by love. Real love, gritty, grounded, deep love, the kind that takes time, the kind that challenges you to be better, the kind that sees past the body and into the soul, and you'll know when it's real because it won't feel like a performance. It won't feel like a high you're afraid to lose. It'll feel safe, solid, steady, and you won't be asking questions like, does he still like me? Because you'll know through his actions, through his consistency, through his respect, that he's choosing you. Not just because he lusts after you, but because he's inspired by you. Let the boys play their games. Let them chase the thrill. Let them ghost and breadcrumb and gaslight. You don't have time for that. You're not here to be played with. You're here for truth, for depth, for alignment. And that starts when you stop mistaking lust for love and start living like the love you want already exists inside you. One of the hardest things for a woman to do is walk away from a man she feels intensely drawn to. That pull, when it's physical, emotional, electric, it can override your logic. You tell yourself it's rare. You convince yourself that this kind of connection must mean something. You assume that if it feels this powerful to you, it must feel just as powerful to him. But that's where you need to pause, because what feels powerful isn't always purposeful. And what you feel doesn't always reflect what's real. Lust has a way of flooding your system. It can disguise itself as something deeper, something destined. But that's the lie of chemistry. It makes you feel chosen when what's really happening is that you're being desired. And those two things feel the same on the surface, but they're miles apart in substance. Being chosen means someone sees your depth, your story, your values, your struggles. And they lean in not because it's easy, but because it's you. Being desired means someone sees what excites them and reaches for it, often without any thought of what comes next. Now, let's get really honest here. How many times have you found yourself trying to stretch a connection that was never meant to last? How many times have you told yourself, if I just give him a little more time, he'll come around? Or worse, maybe if I'm more understanding, more available, more low maintenance, he'll finally see my worth. That's the trap of mistaking early desire for long-term potential, and it's not love that keeps you there. It's fear. Fear of starting over, fear of being alone, fear of admitting that what felt like so much was really just surface. But here's the truth. Real love doesn't need to be chased. You don't have to convince the right man. You don't have to shrink, perform, or overextend to keep him interested. If he's meant to love you, he'll meet you in the middle. And if he's not, then it's your job to stop giving him the middle of your heart. One of the most powerful things you can do as a woman is hold space for something deeper than lust. That means slowing down. That means asking better questions. That means not rewarding inconsistency with intimacy. Because if a man hasn't earned your emotional trust, your physical vulnerability should be off the table. Not because you're withholding, but because you value yourself too much to hand over access to your soul or your body to someone who hasn't proven he's safe. And I get it. In today's world, slowing down can feel countercultural. Everyone wants instant connection, instant answers, instant gratification. But love doesn't follow that timeline. Lust does. Lust is impatient. Lust wants now. But love wants truth. And truth takes time. Truth shows up after the masks come off, after the excitement calms down, after he's had to show you who he really is, when it's not convenient. That's why the woman who can sit in uncertainty is so powerful. She doesn't rush the story. She doesn't fill in the blanks. She doesn't assume the best or worst. She simply watches, observes, lets his actions write the narrative, because she knows that the way a man behaves when he's not getting exactly what he wants is the truest version of who he is. And guess what? You can't find that version of a man if you're always rushing to give him everything. You can't see his integrity if you're too busy managing his emotions. You can't test his character if you're constantly trying to win his approval. Sometimes love requires space, not to push someone away, but to see if they'll choose to come closer. But here's what really matters. You have to believe that your love is worth earning, not just your body. Not just your attention, your actual love, your loyalty, your support, your heart. And when you know it's worth earning, you stop handing it out for free just because someone shows interest. You realize that interest is cheap. Anyone can be interested. Real men invest. Let me say this again because it's vital. If a man's actions don't match the weight of your presence in his life, he's not your person. If he shows up for the good times but disappears during the tough ones, he's not your person. If he's all in when it's exciting but emotionally unavailable when it's vulnerable, he's not your person. And no amount of physical attraction will ever change that. And if this stings a little, that's okay. Sometimes the truth isn't meant to comfort us. It's meant to wake us up. Because too many women are living in almost love. They're settling for attention instead of affection. They're caught in emotional limbo, constantly wondering where they stand, constantly trying to decode mixed signals, constantly hoping that one day the man who wanted them physically will magically grow into the man who's ready for emotional intimacy. But men don't grow into love under pressure. They grow into it when they choose it, repeatedly, consistently, with intention. So your power is in your pause, in the space between desire and decision. In that moment where you ask yourself, is this connection building something lasting? Or is it just another fireworks show with no follow-through? And the more you ask that question, the more you'll start to see patterns. You'll start to spot the difference between temporary attention and real emotional investment. You'll stop being impressed by men who come on strong and start being intrigued by the ones who come in steady. And let's talk about the difference between pursuit and presence. Pursuit is what most women get swept up in. The texting, the flirting, the plans, the compliments. It feels exciting, validating, fun. But presence is what builds love. Presence is when a man shows up not just to impress you, but to know you. Presence is when he's interested in your day, your mind, your fears, your joy. Presence is when he sees you beyond the highlight reel and chooses you anyway. You see, lust doesn't ask questions, it makes assumptions. Love is curious, it digs, it explores. It wants to know why you are the way you are. And a man who loves you will not only ask those questions, he'll stay long enough to listen to the answers. But that only happens when you give him time, when you don't rush to make it something more than it is, when you let the connection breathe instead of forcing it to perform. So many women are afraid of losing a man if they don't play the game a certain way. If they don't sleep with him fast enough, if they're not chill enough, if they don't make things easy. But let me ask you, do you want a man who's only there when it's easy? Because if that's what you're building, it will collapse the moment life gets hard. And life will get hard. Love doesn't protect you from difficulty. It prepares you to face it together. If you want that kind of love, the kind that lasts, the kind that grows, the kind that deepens, you have to date like you already have it. You have to walk into every connection with the energy of someone who's already whole, who's not looking to be completed, who's not looking for rescue, but someone who's simply looking for alignment. And when that's your energy, you stop wasting time on people who only want pieces of you, because you're no longer selling yourself in parts. You're standing fully in your truth, and here's what that truth might look like. I don't sleep with someone I don't emotionally trust. I'm not here to rush. I'm here to connect. I value consistency over chemistry. I don't chase. I observe. These aren't rules. These are standards. And standards are what separate the ones who are ready from the ones who are just rehearsing. You are not here to be someone's maybe. You are not here to be someone's temporary excitement. You are not here to be consumed and forgotten. You are here to be loved deeply, truthfully, fully. And that love will come, not when you perform for it, not when you beg for it, but when you become the woman who won't settle for anything less. Let the man who only wants your body find someone who's willing to live in that shallow water. You're not built for shallow, you're built for depth. You're built for intimacy that goes beyond the surface. And the right man, he's not afraid of that. He's inspired by it. He wants to meet you there in that deep place. But he can't do that if you're busy performing for attention. He can only meet you there if you lead with truth. You set the tone. You create the standard. You decide what love looks like in your life. And when you hold to that, when you don't waver, when you stand firm in your worth, love doesn't just find you. It respects you, it rises to meet you, because men don't fall in love with women who make it easy. They fall in love with women who make it real. And here's where everything starts to shift. Because once you truly understand that a man's lust is not a promise, it's a signal, you begin to treat it accordingly. Lust is not an indication of who he will be to you. It's only an indication of how drawn he is to what he sees. But love is about what he's willing to do for what he feels. Lust is attraction. Love is action. And if his actions don't evolve past the pursuit of pleasure, then there's no love forming, just habits, just repetition, just ego being fed. And when you're a woman who lives in alignment with truth, you don't confuse appetite with intention. You don't let a hungry man convince you he's a devoted one. You recognize that a man who only comes alive in the presence of desire is not one who will sustain you through the storms of commitment. You don't judge him for it, but you don't entertain it either, because your love is not a reward for interest. It's a sanctuary for effort. And if he won't build with you, he doesn't belong with you. The greatest shift you will ever make in your love life is the moment you stop trying to prove you're lovable and start proving to yourself that you already are. That means you don't wait to be picked. You pick. You don't wait for him to realize your worth. You realize it first. And you don't get stuck wondering why someone didn't choose you. You look at who you chose and you ask why. And if you're really honest with yourself, there have been moments when you chose a man who didn't value you because you were still learning to value yourself. And that's okay. That's part of the journey. But you don't stay there. You don't keep watering dead plants hoping they'll bloom. You don't keep explaining yourself to people who aren't even listening. You stop trying to be enough for someone who doesn't even know what enough looks like. And you turn inward, you build yourself, because the more you build your inner foundation, the more self-trust, clarity, joy, and peace you cultivate, the less power temporary attraction has over you. You stop mistaking emotional highs for connection. You stop chasing chemistry like it's the only ingredient to a good relationship. You realize that lust is supposed to feel intense, but love is supposed to feel safe. And that safety, that deep sense of being emotionally held, is something you can't fabricate. It's something a man either creates with you or doesn't. And if he doesn't, you don't chase, you don't fight for it, you don't negotiate with it, you release it. Because you're not in the business of teaching someone how to treat you. You're in the business of choosing someone who already gets it, who shows up not just with desire, but with devotion, who doesn't need to be convinced that you're worth staying for. He just knows, and if he doesn't know, he's not ready. See, this is the real test of a man's emotional maturity. It's not how fast he says, "I've never felt this way before." It's not how early he calls you baby, or how quickly he wants to see you again. The real test is what happens after the dopamine fades, after the lust simmers down, after the newness wears off. Does he still show up? Does he still ask you deep questions? Does he still offer consistency, attention, respect? Or does he start pulling back the moment you stop being a fantasy and start being a woman with needs, dreams, fears, and boundaries? Because the moment you become real to a man is the moment his true capacity for love reveals itself. And if he disappears when things get real, he wasn't ready for love. He was ready for distraction. And you, my friend, were never born to be someone's distraction. You were born to be a mirror, one that reflects back to a man the highest version of himself and only welcomes in the kind of love that can meet you there. And don't let anyone tell you that this kind of love is too much to ask for. Don't let jaded people convince you that you have to settle for something transactional. Don't buy into the narrative that says, just take what you can get before it's too late. That's fear talking. That's scarcity. That's people projecting their pain onto you. You're not too old, too damaged, too picky, or too late. You're just early in the timeline of your aligned relationship. And the way you shorten that timeline is by choosing better. Not faster. When you raise your standard, yes, fewer men will qualify, but that's the point, because love is not about volume, it's about value. You don't need dozens of men chasing you. You need one man who sees you clearly, holds you gently, respects you fiercely, and loves you fully. And if that takes time, so be it. Time spent alone while whole is not loneliness. It's preparation, it's clarity, it's strength. And let me say this to the part of you that still feels like love has to be earned through effort. You are already enough. You don't have to perform your value. You don't have to rehearse your worth. The right man won't need you to be less independent or more agreeable. He won't need you to silence your truth to make him feel more secure. The right man will rise to meet your power, not run from it, because a man who is rooted in his own worth doesn't get intimidated by yours. He's not threatened by your brilliance. He's not turned off by your clarity. He's not annoyed by your emotional depth. He doesn't label you too much because he knows the difference between chaos and capacity. You were made for capacity, for depth, for honesty, and a man who lives on the surface will never know how to swim in your waters. So if he walks away, let him. If he ghosts, don't chase. If he says he's not ready, believe him. If he says, I just want to keep it casual, believe that too. Don't rewrite his story hoping it ends differently. Don't stay emotionally loyal to a fantasy. A man who knows your worth won't gamble with your heart. He'll protect it, not by promise, but by presence, by showing up, by doing the work, by staying when it matters most. You are not here to be temporarily exciting. You are here to be deeply cherished. And if he can't do that, it's not your job to wait while he figures it out. It's your job to continue building a life so rich, so full, so unapologetically yours, that the only kind of man who belongs in it is one who comes not just to take, but to contribute, to bring joy, clarity, peace, and strength. To love you in a way that feels like a mirror, not a maze. And maybe that means spending more time alone. Maybe that means walking away from men who are good on paper but lacking in spirit. Maybe that means saying no when your whole body is craving attention, but your soul is craving truth. That's the work. That's the real path to love. It's not just about attracting a man, it's about attracting the right man. And that only happens when you've built a relationship with yourself that's so honest, you can't lie to yourself anymore about what love really is. You've outgrown the surface level stuff. You've outgrown being picked based on convenience. You've outgrown men who want access but no accountability. You've outgrown being someone's emotional home while they refuse to build a roof. And now you're choosing better, not because you're bitter, but because you're aware. And here's the beautiful part. When you start living like this, love gets quieter, but richer. It's no longer loud, grand gestures and fast, moving intensity. It's small, consistent moments, deep conversations, eye contact that feels like safety, a man who listens, a man who apologizes, a man who remembers. And when you experience that, everything before it feels like noise, like static, like stories you've finally outgrown. You don't need to prove anything, not your beauty, not your value, not your loyalty, not your love. The right man will see it, feel it, and meet it. But only if you make space by letting go of every man who ever made you question it. So take your time. Trust yourself. Love is coming, not because you chase it, but because you've become the version of yourself that only accepts real. So if you take nothing else from this, let it be this. You are not here to be a man's spark. You are here to be his sanctuary. You're not here to light him up for a moment. You're here to walk beside the man who can stand in your fire and still protect your flame. Let lust do what lust does. It ignites. But love, real love, builds, it shows up, it stays. And the man who is meant for you won't just crave your body. He'll crave your soul, your mind, your peace, your presence. He will not run from your power. He will rise with it. You do not need to shrink, bend, or barter for love. You do not need to settle for attention dressed up as connection. You do not need to carry the weight of building a future with someone who's only present in the moment. What you need is already within you: clarity, strength, softness, self-respect. That's the foundation. That's what guides you forward. So let lust come. Let it teach you. Let it wake up parts of you, but don't let it fool you. Don't confuse the fire with the foundation. Let a man's actions, not his attraction, be the measure of his love. And until you see the consistency, the effort, the depth, the respect, you owe no one your heart. Not because you're guarded, but because you're whole. And wholeness doesn't settle. It doesn't beg. It doesn't wait for someone to maybe love you later. Wholeness walks away from lust that goes nowhere and makes room for love that grows. Because you, just as you are already worthy of the kind of love that doesn't start with lust and fizzle out, but the kind that starts with truth and deepens with time. And that truth, that's the one every woman must hear. Every woman deserves to live, and every man worthy of her will be ready to meet.